gathering around the fire. The twin moons of Xeris Prime cast a pale glow over the craggy landscape as a group of young soldiers gathered around a flickering campfire. They were a diverse bunch, hailing from a dozen different worlds and species, but united in their mission to protect the Galactic Alliance. As they swapped rations and ribald jokes, a figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of the firelight. "Mind if I join you?" The voice was gravelly, the accent unfamiliar. The soldiers looked up to see an old alien, his scaly hide bearing the scars of countless battles. Sergeant Terox, a burly Carthian, gestured to an empty spot near the fire. "Be our guest, Elder." The old warrior settled himself on a rock, his joints creaking. In the dancing light of the flames, his eyes gleamed with a depth of experience that silenced the boisterous chatter. "You're Zaxos, aren't you?" ventured Lissa, a lithe Syrian scout, the one who fought in the Earth campaign. A murmur rippled through the group. Zaxos was a legend, a veteran of the most notorious conflict in recent galactic history. Zaxos nodded slowly. "Aye, that was me. Though it was a lifetime ago." "Is it true what they say about Earth?" asked Kovar, a young Arcturnian soldier, "that everything there is deadly?" A wry smile twisted Zaxos' lips. "Deadly doesn't begin to describe it, lad. When the Alliance first set its sights on Earth, we thought it would be a quick conquest, a primitive world, ripe for the taking." He shook his head. "We had no idea what we were walking into." The soldiers leaned in, their eyes wide in the firelight. They had all heard tales of Earth, whispered stories of a planet where even the air could kill, where the natives fought like demons. But to hear it from someone who had actually been there. "Tell us," urged Terox, voicing the group's collective thoughts. Zaxos stared into the flames for a long moment, as if gathering his memories. Then, with a deep breath, he began his tale. "We landed in a place the humans called the Amazon. The horrors of Earth. The Amazon," Zaxos continued, his voice low and haunting, "a green hell that stretched as far as the eye could see. We marched into that jungle with all the arrogance of a superior race, secure in our advanced weapons and technology. But the jungle had its own weapons." He described the oppressive heat, the air so thick with humidity it felt like drowning with every breath. He spoke of the insects, swarms of biting, stinging, disease-carrying pests that no amount of armor could repel. And then there were the plants, seemingly harmless, but hiding poisons that could kill in minutes. But the worst, Zaxos said, his eyes distant, were the creatures. Predators that could disappear into the foliage, stalk you for miles, and strike without warning. We lost more soldiers to the wildlife than to the humans in those early days. The young soldiers shuddered, trying to imagine such a world. Lissa, who had grown up on the icy plains of Sirius B, couldn't fathom a place so lush and yet so lethal. "And the humans?" Kovar asked, his voice barely a whisper. Zaxos' gaze sharpened. "The humans," he repeated, "they were something else entirely. We thought they would be soft, easy to subdue, but they fought like nothing we had ever seen." He described the first ambushes, the shock of seeing their advanced scout drones shot out of the sky by primitive projectile weapons. He talked about the traps, pits, and snares that blended seamlessly into the jungle, turning the very ground into a minefield. But it wasn't just their tactics, Zaxos said. It was their spirit. They never quit, never surrendered, even when we had them outgunned and outnumbered. They fought for every inch of their world with a ferocity that bordered on madness. He told of battles that raged for days, of cities that became ash and rubble, but still housed pockets of resistance. He spoke of humans who sacrificed themselves willingly, who charged into certain death just to take a few more invaders with them. The soldiers listened, enraptured and horrified in equal measure. Terox, who had faced the brutal warlords of Karth, found a new respect growing for these humans. "How did you survive?" he asked. Zaxos barked a humorless laugh. "Survive? We didn't. Not really. Not in any way that mattered. But that, my young friends, is a tale for another night. With that cryptic statement, he fell silent, his gaze once again lost in the dancing flames. The soldiers exchanged glances, their minds reeling with the images of this nightmarish world and the beings who called it home. Ingenuity and resilience. As the moons climbed higher in the night sky, Zaxos resumed his tale. "We thought we knew war," he said. "We were the Galactic Alliance, the most advanced civilizations in the known universe. Our weapons could level continents, our ships could cross the void in days. But the humans, they taught us what real warfare was." He spoke of the humans' ingenuity, their ability to adapt and innovate in the face of overwhelming odds. When the Alliance cut off their supply lines, the humans learned to live off the land, to turn their deadly flora and fauna into weapons. When the Alliance jammed their communications, the humans fell back on ancient methods, using runners and coded messages to coordinate their resistance. They turned their greatest weakness, their primitive technology, into their greatest strength, Zaxos said. They knew their world better than we ever could, and they used that knowledge to devastating effect. He told of human hackers who infiltrated the Alliance's networks, sowing chaos and disinformation, of human engineers who turned scavenged alien tech into makeshift but deadly weapons, of human medics who used their knowledge of Earth's biosphere to create treatments for the alien plagues the invaders brought. The young soldiers listened, their awe growing with every word. Lissa, who prided herself on her adaptability, found herself humbled by the sheer scope of human resourcefulness. But it wasn't just their cleverness, Zaxos continued. It was their spirit, their sheer bloody-minded refusal to give up. Even in the darkest hours, when their cities were ash and their people were starving, they kept fighting. He recalled a battle in the ruins of a place called New York, where a single human battalion held off an entire Alliance division for weeks. He spoke of a resistance leader, a woman named Sarah, who lost her entire family to the war, but continued to rally her people, to lead daring raids and sabotage missions. They fought for each other, Zaxos said, his voice rough with emotion. They fought for their homes, their loved ones, their very right to exist. And in doing so, they achieved the impossible. They'd made the Alliance bleed. Kovar, who had always dreamed of glory in battle, felt a chill run down his spine. He had never considered that an enemy could fight with such devotion, such selflessness. But how did it end? Terox asked, leaning forward. The war, I mean. The histories say the Alliance withdrew, but they never say why. Zaxos' eyes glinted in the firelight. Ah, he said, that is the heart of the story, isn't it? The turning point, the moment when everything changed. But to understand that, you must first understand the depths of our arrogance and the heights of human courage. He settled back, his scarred hands clasped before him, and the soldiers knew they were in for a long night of tales. But not one of them would have moved for all the riches in the galaxy. The turning point. We had been fighting for years, Zaxos said, his voice low and intense. Years of bloody stalemate, of grinding attrition that sapped the strength of both sides. The Alliance had superior numbers, superior tech, but the humans, they had home field advantage and a determination that bordered on the fanatical. He described a world transformed, where once great cities had become fortresses, where the very landscape had been reshaped by the ceaseless combat. The Amazon, once a green hell, was now a scorched wasteland, its ancient trees reduced to charcoal by orbital bombardments. The great ice sheets of the poles had melted under the heat of fusion bombs, swallowing coastal cities and changing the very climate. But still they fought, Zaxos said, shaking his head in remembrance. Still they resisted, with a stubborn tenacity that defied all logic. It was as if the worse things got, the harder they fought back. He told of a raid on an Alliance supply base, where a small human team had infiltrated under the cover of a dust storm, the particles scrambling the base's sensors. They had planted explosives, turning the storm itself into a weapon. and vanished into the swirling sands before the Alliance could react. That was when we began to realize, Zaxos said, that we were not just fighting an enemy, but an idea. The idea of freedom, of self-determination, of the right to fight for one's own fate. And that, my young friends, is an idea that cannot be conquered by any weapon. The soldiers nodded, understanding dawning in their eyes. They had all joined the Alliance military for their own reasons. Duty, glory, a chance to see the stars. But none of them had ever considered what it might be like to fight for their very existence. The turning point came in the 5th year of the war. Zaxos continued. The Alliance had launched a massive offensive, determined to crush the human resistance once and for all. We landed in force in a place called Siberia, a vast, frozen wasteland that the humans had turned into a fortress. We thought our superior numbers and firepower would make short work of them. He paused, his eyes distant, as if seeing again the icy plains, the towering mountains, the endless gray sky. We were wrong, he said simply. The humans had been preparing for this, stockpiling weapons and supplies, digging in deep. And they had a plan, a desperate, audacious plan that we never saw coming. Zaxos described the battle, the clashes of armies on a scale unseen in galactic history. He spoke of the humans' secret weapon, a network of tunnels and bunkers beneath the permafrost, where they could move unseen and strike without warning. But the real stroke of genius, Zaxos said, was the weather. The humans had studied our technology, our limitations. They knew our sensors had trouble with extreme cold, that our equipment was vulnerable to the freeze. So they waited until the depths of winter, until the temperatures plunged to levels even our best gear could not withstand. And then they struck. He told of a night of fire and ice, where the humans emerged from their hidden strongholds, wielding weapons adapted to the brutal cold. Of Alliance soldiers frozen in their tracks, their high-tech armor turned into icy tombs. Of a retreat turned into a rout, as the mighty Alliance war machine was humbled by the fury of an Arctic winter. That was the beginning of the end, Zaxos said. Oh, the war would drag on for another year, with more battles, more blood spilled on both sides. But after Siberia, the Alliance leadership knew, deep down, that this was a fight we could not win. Not without sacrificing everything that made us who we were. He fell silent then, his tale done, and the soldiers around him sat in stunned contemplation. They had come to this fire seeking tales of glory, of the triumph of the strong over the weak. Instead, they had found a sobering lesson in the true nature of strength and the unbreakable will of those who fight for their homes and their freedom. Lessons and legends. As the first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky, Zaxos stirred from his contemplative silence. The young soldiers around him, still digesting the weight of his story, looked up at him with a new respect, a new understanding in their eyes. You asked me earlier how I survived, Zaxos said, his voice rough with memory. The truth is, I'm not sure I did. Oh, I came back from Earth in one piece, more or less. But a part of me, the part that believed in the superiority of our kind, in the inevitability of our conquest, that part died on the frozen plains of Siberia. He looked around the circle, meeting each soldier's gaze in turn. I learned a lot from the humans, he said, about the power of adaptation, of innovation in the face of necessity, about the strength that comes from fighting for something greater than oneself. But most of all, I learned humility. I learned that no race, no civilization is invincible, that there are some forces in this universe that cannot be conquered by arms alone. In the growing light, the soldiers could see the scars that crisscrossed Zaxos' hide, the old wounds that marked his body and soul. They understood now the weight that the old warrior carried, the shadows that haunted his eyes. The war ended not long after Siberia, Zaxos said. The Alliance leadership, in their wisdom, decided that Earth was more trouble than it was worth. We withdrew, leaving the humans to rebuild from the ashes of our hubris. Some say it was a victory for the Alliance, that we chose to be magnanimous in our restraint. But those of us who were there, who saw the cost, we knew better. Sergeant Terox, his craggy face thoughtful, spoke up. What happened to the humans after that? Zaxos shrugged. They survived. They rebuilt. They did what they had always done. They adapted, they innovated, they found a way to thrive in the face of adversity. And they remembered. The last I heard, Earth had become a hub of technological and cultural exchange, a neutral ground where species from across the cosmos could meet and trade in peace. But they never forgot the lessons of the war, never forgot the price of their freedom. Lissa, her eyes shining with a new appreciation, voiced the question on all their minds. And what about you? What did you do after the war? Zaxos smiled, a rare, genuine smile. I became a teacher, he said. I traveled the galaxy, sharing my stories, my lessons, with anyone who would listen. Because I realized that the true legacy of the Earth War was not the battles fought, or the lives lost, but the wisdom gained. The understanding that strength comes in many forms, and that even the weakest, most primitive species can teach us something about ourselves. He stood then, his old bones creaking, and looked out over the lightening landscape. And that, my young friends, is why I came to your fire tonight, not just to reminisce about old battles, but to pass on what I've learned, so that when you face your own challenges, your own impossible odds, you'll remember the humans. Remember that courage, determination, and unity can overcome even the greatest of foes. With that, Zaxos turned and walked away, his form vanishing into the early morning mist. The soldiers watched him go, each lost in their own thoughts. They had come to this place as raw recruits, eager for glory and adventure. They would leave as something more, as warriors who understood the true nature of strength and the enduring power of the spirit. As the sun rose over the craggy horizon, the legend of Earth and the lessons of its defenders took on a new life in the hearts and minds of a new generation. And though the galaxy would continue to turn, though new conflicts and challenges would arise, the story of a small, primitive world that stood against an empire would endure, a testament to the indomitable will of life and the unbreakable strength of those who fight for their right to be free.